Hey folks, so I'm going to do a little restoration, kind of a how-to on restoring a leather Cairns helmet. This is an 89 N5A New Yorker. I picked this up rather cheap, and what I liked about it is that it's pre-MSA and it still has a scroll work. So kind of got this for a little bit of a deal, and just going to go over how I restore it. And everybody might have their own opinions on and own ways on how to restore it, but this is my process, and I've restored several helmets. So we'll start off with the beginning. So one of the first things that you actually want to do is you want to remove the tetrahedrons that are all the way around it. I know it looks like they're on there, but this is original factory paint, and it's just clean underneath it. That's all that is. The previous owner of this helmet began to strip the paint. There's a different way that I do it. If you want to take your time and sand it, by all means you can, but the downfall to sanding, especially when you get along the brim, is this scroll work. You do too much sanding on this scroll work, you're going to lose the scroll work, and this is what makes a Cairns helmet, leather helmet, kind of stick out, is this scroll work. So you can sand by all means if that's your way of doing it. That's fine, but it's going to take a lot of sanding. And I do indeed do some sanding, but we're gonna get to that point. One of the things I use is citrus strip. This stuff is absolutely wonderful. It works on all original paint on a Cairns. If you need to change the color, or if you want to go back to natural, it's relatively safe. It is one of the safer ways to strip the paint, as opposed to using paint thinner and different types of alcohol-based paint remover. So we use citrus strip. You want to make sure that you follow the instructions on the back. Make sure that you have your hands covered up. As you can see, I'm wearing some nitrile gloves to protect my hands. And you may have to change it. You may have to change your gloves after you apply it, and I'll more than likely be able to show you why. But shake this up really, really good. You want to mix it up really, really, really good to get everything appropriate as far as what's inside this. You want to strip out your internals. So by stripping out the internals, there's a brass ring that's put around the impact cap here, and all you need to do is you can take a flathead screwdriver and just lightly pry up and then pop out your liner and everything from there. You can take this off if you want to. This is actually more than likely going to get replaced, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm just stuffing that down in there with the suspension, and strip all that off. If you want to take your eagle off, that's fine. Where this is riveted in, and this is an old brass, or what people like to call the retro brass. This is the original retro brass. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it as is. Typically, I'll go ahead and remove all these, but I don't feel like riveting it back in. So, and now all you want to do is actually just apply some of this. I kind of put a little bit around the top part of the crown here. I just dump it around there, and I rub it into all the cracks and creases, and down each part. Cool thing about this is you know, a lot of paint removing chemicals and such smells really bad. You got to be in a well ventilated area. Citrus strip is actually pretty good. You don't have to worry about choking and everything on that. So that's where I start. I start from the top. Kind of get in the little hard to reach spots, because that's usually the hardest spot to get the paint out of. Especially if you're sanding. It's a hard spot to get in. Make sure that you get everything out. Okay. Get in the cracks here, all the way around. Now it's a matter of letting it sit and soak. It soaks into the paint, and it actually causes the paint to lift away from the leather. It's like it absorbs into the paint itself, lift away from the leather, and then you can scrub or brush it off. So we're gonna let this sit here for a while. let it do its job. Sometimes it might dry. You might notice that you have some spots that dry, like right here starting to dry a little bit. I may have to come back and put another little coat of citrus strip on it, but for the most part, usually one good thick coat all the way around this works wonderfully. So we're gonna try this out and give it some time and then come back. So it's been about 45 minutes, an hour. I'm gonna come down here and check this out. See, you can see where it's lifting off of the leather. It literally lifts it off the leather. Let's go ahead and just kind of, I guess, we'll take a little wipe here. Found a good spot. Looks like right here. We'll wipe it real quick and see what we got. See? That's all it takes. That is all it takes. Is just letting it sit for a little bit and then coming back and doing a little wiping and scraping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more citrus strip back just to where I wiped. There's a couple spots over here that have dried a little bit. I'm going to add some there. And like here, look at this. I can peel it right off. Look at, see that? That's just peeling off. It just peels right off of the leather. You can see the underlying leather there. And it's awesome. I mean, this is absolutely wonderful stuff. Like I said, I can come over here and peel it off. And that's what you want. That's what you want all the way around this. So that way this just comes off. Okay. So I'm gonna add some more citrus strip to this and let it sit longer, and then we'll come back and wipe it off. Now you need to be patient with this. You need to be patient with it because when this soaks and you start seeing the paint lift off of the lid, and then when you go to clean off that, you may see that there's still some paint that hasn't quite gotten absorbed up by this citrus strip. So you need to be patient when you do this to do it correctly. Don't be impatient. You got all the time in the world. If you're trying to restore your own helmet, make sure you allot yourself a certain amount of time to get it done. Don't rush it. Otherwise, it's going to look like absolute shit. Don't rush it. Take your time with it, and you'll have an excellent outcome with it. So when I wipe all this off, or I'll show you my technique on what I do after I'm ready to do that. When I do that, I can almost guarantee just by looking at it right now that I'm probably going to have to go back and touch some spots up with the citrus strip. So we're just going to give it some time right now. And like I said, just keep an eye on it. Watch where it bubbles up. Okay. You can see that it is just nasty looking right now. But when we're done working on this, it's going to look great. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and do my first round of removal here. And to do that, I usually cover the bottom. There's several different ways to do this. You can do it in a utility sink with kind of lukewarm water. Or you can do it the way I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it right now because I don't have a utility sink at my house. Usually when I'm at work, I will be able to use a utility sink there. But I've got some water here, and I've got a coarse bristle brush here. And all I'm doing is kind of scrubbing some of that paint off. Okay, rinsing it off a little bit. And scrubbing some more paint off. Okay. I'm going to do that to the whole helmet and see kind of where I'm at afterwards and what I need to catch up on, right? So you can do that. You can rinse it as you go along, or you can take a rag and just kind of wipe off some of the excess. Okay. Remember, it is going to be a little darker until the leather dries. All right, but that's a good start right there. So I'm going to continue doing this for the rest of the helmet and see where we get. So as you see here, don't mind the steel wool. Don't worry, I did not use the steel wool. You can tell that. I continued to use the bristle brush. You couldn't tell downstairs with the paint because it was so thick. But I was able to brush most of it off, bring it upstairs, rinse it in the sink, Use the bristle brush just a little bit to scrape off the excess amounts, and this is what you've got. Okay, that's what you got for now. You've got most of your paint off, and I will not need to use any more citrus strip. Now I'm gonna let it dry, and this is when we come in with the sandpaper and just kind of hit the small spots. The small spots kind of get rid of all this stuff. As you can see, most of this just needs to be brushed off, is off of the scroll work. There's a little bit over here, but with some finesse, with some maybe 200 grit sandpaper, you can just barely touch that and get rid of the rest. So we're gonna let this dry a little bit, and then we're gonna take it back downstairs and we're gonna start doing some sanding. So something else I wanted to mention, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that Cairns, for a little while, and I believe MSA went ahead and started doing it again, but if you have an older Cairns helmet, I have one, I don't have one to compare with you right now, it's at work, my service helmet, but they put little bits of Bondo in here, and if you have a newer MSA, you'll see it as well. They put little bits of Bondo in here to hide the imperfection where the stitching went when they joined these, when they made the helmet, when Cairns made the helmets. So you can see where there was Bondo put in here. There's no Bondo anywhere else on the helmet. New MSA helmets, they have that. You can see that on the newers, not so much the pre-MSA, but they went ahead and took that back. Some of the old Cairns helmets have that. I never did understand it. Someone had told me that a while ago. I didn't believe it, but this is one that I know that I have a newer Cairns. Well, I should say newer. It's a 2002, but it is an MSA. And it's got the MSA tag in it. But you can tell on it, and actually I can show you it. This is an unrestored, brand new, I should say brand new but older, post helmet. See, you can see where there's Bondo in there, where they've made the, see how it's flush? When the leather was joined on production, there was a V in there, and that V was where the stitching ended. Because if you look and see how they were made, when they joined these, it's separated down here and it came out to like a V, okay, or a Y, upside down Y or V, whatever way you want to put it here. So, my attempt to this is going to be to restore this to a natural red. That I'm going to attempt to do that. I may end up having to go to black, but I can't have this. Can't have this Bondo looking, because then my helmet will be natural leather with little white patches in there. So, more than likely what I will do is I will take a Dremel tool in there and kind of dig that out. To get it back to what it should be. So right now I've got to go downstairs and we've got to do the underside, and I did go ahead and take out the chin strap since we're going to be putting a new one on it at some point. So let's go and citrus strip the bottom now, let it sit, do the same process as I did for the top, and then we'll go back and we'll start doing the sanding. All right. So for sanding, I've already gone ahead and done some of it. And then I'll go over just to double check on certain areas. But what we're really looking for is, you see how there's these dark patches in there? That's completely normal, especially if there was paint that once sat on here. Some of that leather absorbed some of that paint dye. So you're still going to have imperfections as far as dark colors and light colors intertwined into the leather. What we want to focus on is these shiny patches here. That's where there's still paint that sits. There's no need for me to go ahead and put citrus strip on that when it's a little harder work. It's not on the scroll, so I don't have to worry about over sanding. And what I want to do is I want to take a coarse grit sandpaper, and I usually start off at about 80 or so. I've got some various types of sandpaper. Here is an assortment of it. I start off with an 80 grit, and I just kind of spot sand it. So you want to go with the grain of the leather, which in this case it's always going to be up and down. When you're dealing with in here, it's going to be with the shape of the brim. So take your coarse grit sandpaper and spot sand that area. So as you see, I've gotten rid of everything. So the other thing that we do once we do our spot sanding, and we're going to do this with the rest of the helmet with a finer grit sandpaper, but we're going to go down on our sandpaper size. I should say down, up on our sandpaper grit. This is a 200. You can go up to like, you know, like 120, or you can work your way up, but mine kind of bounces between 200, 320, or 220, 324. So I'm just jumping right from an 80 to a 200. And I just got to put a little bit more elbow grease in there. But now I want to kind of get rid of that coarse texture from the larger grit. So it's feeling a little bit better, and then I'm going to go up a little bit more. So we've got some 320 here, which I'll cut. $420, or I'm sorry, 400. And that's pretty smooth, and that's fine for me. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do for all of this helmet. I'm going to get rid of this. This is some paint here, and some of this here, and it'll hopefully look like this, nice and smooth. As for the brim, as I mentioned, you don't want to sand too much, otherwise you're going to get rid of your scroll work. So what I do is I take a coarse grit sandpaper, I kind of fold it in half so I've got a kind of like a little point there, and I find my little spots that I want to get rid of the paint on, and I kind of just sand that little spot the best I can. I kind of move around. And I've used the sandpaper, it's a little wore out and kind of damp a little bit, but I just kind of spot sand it there too. Okay, this piece is about wore out. Got another piece here. The same for here. You can see in here that there's some spots that need some spot sanding, and that's all I'm doing. See, and I still have the scroll work there. Same goes around the outside. There's that. Okay. There you go. And I'll do that all the way around the brim. I'll kind of look for spots that need to be touched up. There's a little piece there. It's like a magic eraser. And then around where the holes for the borks go, which I'm not too utterly worried about because I have something else that's going to be going in there. But there's another spot here. Oh. There we go. And we're just going to kind of look around here. There's a little spot back here. That's gone. Fine detail. You know, just like the job, you got to pay attention to detail, right? So the same concept goes with this. With good attention to detail comes good reward. So you do this and you pay attention to the detail on it. About wore out there. Then you'll have a good outcome. And I know I love nothing more than when I restore a helmet for it to be just as good as if I'd want to wear it myself. So that's how you get rid of the paint without getting rid of your scroll work. Alright, so now that I've gotten all my sanding done that I planned on getting done, I may see some stuff in here that I might want to touch up right before I do my final touches. But I've got a little pick here, and what I'm going to do is kind of go in the grooves up here and just kind of pick out some of the stuff that I couldn't really reach just because I didn't take the crown piece off. So I'm kind of getting underneath there, picking out, you know, this stuff here. And I'm going to go down where the leather is, kind of get in the little cracks there. If you have a air compressor, you can put air on it. I don't have an air compressor. I wish I did. That'd make it a lot easier, but this is going to work for now. So go around pick, go around the brim here, same concept, if you can see there, and get that out as well. You want to clean this up real good, make sure it's real dry, blow it off, make sure that there is no dust or anything, and that everything's smooth. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is bending your brim. So I bent this prior to stripping it, and I always recommend people, when you're doing your final project, to bend it before you paint it. Okay, the way I bend it is I take hot water. I don't take boiling water or anything like that. The water's about 120 degrees or so, 130 degrees. I let this soak in it, just the brim, I let it soak in it, and then I slowly start to bend the outside. There's a wire that's in here, and this helps keep the shape of your helmet. This was a standard Cairns bend prior, and I did the same thing and just went around the wire and kind of bent it down a little bit, but you want to put even pressure. So if you don't want to reach out here and bend, you want to reach this whole spot. Put your pressure on the back side of your thumb where your knuckle is and just pull down. Okay, you want to do it evenly because you don't want to crack the leather. The reason why you want to bend it before you paint it is because once you paint it and you bend it, you're going to get cracks in your paint. It's not going to look good. You're going to see cracks in your paint. Okay, so those of you that already have it painted and decide to bend it, that's your prerogative, but that's whenever I shape the helmets, I do the shaping after I've stripped it before I paint it. So this one's got a nice Boston bend, a Boston flat to it, and it's going to stay that way. That way, upon use, it'll get its own configuration to it, its own bend. So no need for me to put any other sort of bend in that. So that's all you need to do. When you're done with that, everything's done. You've got your shape, it's cleaned, everything is done. Whether or not you replace your front piece or your crown, you can do that after you paint or leave it. If you're wanting to paint it, go ahead and tape off the spots that you do not want painted. Prime it with an appropriate enamel primer, or flat primer, I'm sorry, and then your paint will be an enamel paint. There's many different sites where you can find out which type of paint to use. I use Sherwin-Williams, that's what's recommended. You can use Top Shot or Hot Shot, whatever. I don't use it, I know some people do. But you want an enamel paint, and you want to make sure that it is an industrial enamel. I do brush on. It's your choice whether you want to do brush on or if you want to do spray on. I choose to do brush on because I don't have to worry about drip marks. I can control that, and unless you have a paint gun where you can get a nice even coat. But it's up to you what you want to paint it, and hopefully that helped you out. If you have any questions or anything, please feel free to leave a comment. I'll do the best I can to answer your questions. Thank you so much for watching.